MCAT Office Hours, our newest episode, our first episode of MCAT Office Hours. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters and Mapped. And joining me, the one, the only, Petros Manasi. I don't know if I have your, do I have a little thing for you? Let me see. I do. Look at that. VP of Test Prep and Tutoring at MSHQ. I'm excited to be here right now. We have about 9 people with us live joining us so far. This is going to be a new series, weekly series, Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, where we are going to be super interactive, answering your MCAT questions, breaking down MCAT questions, potentially bringing students on to have you work through questions as well. So a little bit of live tutoring too. Petros, talk about your experience in the MCAT world and thoughts on what we can accomplish here.
Yeah, I think, just to start things off, the MCAT is near and dear to me.
It's hard. The MCAT is important.
It's hard, right? It's a tough exam. I think what we'll be able to accomplish here is really giving everybody who attends a sense of kind of what they're up against and what they're, what it really takes to understand this exam and understand not just, getting questions right, but really how it fits into the bigger picture. I think oftentimes the MCAT, obviously it's part of the admissions process, but it's lost on why it's there. And there's actually kind of a continuum with the MCAT that does carry forward in life and carry forward into the profession. So it's not just this exam that's there and another thing that you have to do. So
but it is.
What it is?
It is. I'm saying, but it is.
It is, right. So we'll cover a lot, I think, and I'm excited about starting something new. I think this will be a lot of fun for everybody who attends and kind of gets an opportunity. I'm thinking maybe at some point we might even do some pop quizzes and here are a couple problems that you have to do, and let's see who gets the most. Maybe there's a prize, and the prize is a woohoo, right? So lots to come. We're kind of in the period of time with the MCAT season where there's still students who are testing this year kind of for this current application cycle. But we're also in a transition period right now where people are already starting to think about the January and eventually the spring exams. And now's a really good time to kind of get your mindset, especially if you don't have a whole lot going on with school. So it's kind of a good time to get this going, and we've all relaxed hopefully from the 4th. My background, I've been involved with MCAT prep in some capacity or other for 25 years. Actually more than that now, but
don't call me old.
Don't call me old. Exactly. It's okay. It's actually fun getting old.
It's experienced.
Experience.
I'm aged like a fine wine.
That's right. Unless you leave it in the cellar for too long. So I've headed up programs in terms of creation of programs, prepping for the MCAT. I've been an MCAT teacher. Excited to be here to continue to carry things forward and really kind of create something that's very, very student-centric and centered around what students need in terms of MCAT preparation. So,
love it. Excited to be here. So for you, the students, if you are familiar at all with our pre-med office hours, it's a weekly Q&A on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. MCAT office hours is going to act a lot in a similar way. So Tyler jumping in with their first the first question here. Can we eventually walk through some practice problems? We will. That is one of the hopes is we can get super interactive here. And basically, if you follow Medical School Headquarters at all, and I know Petros, one of the exciting things that kind of brought you over here is our philosophy on the fact that we want to be a free resource for as many people as possible, regardless of their ability to hire us, tutoring, advising, whatever. So think of this as an hour of free MCAT tutoring. That's really where I hope to go with this, and help students understand, number one, the impact of the MCAT on the application. We can talk about the admission side. Obviously, that's my background. but then also really dive into MCAT nitty gritty strategies, and then yeah, some breakdown of questions and stuff like that.
And I'll just add one thing, Ryan. But it's also, I mean, obviously, yes, MCAT tutoring, but also MCAT advising, right? I mean, seeing some questions here already that, you know, coming through as far as like retakes on Saturday. What should I do, right? And, you know, I'm finishing prereqs at this date. So really just kind of figuring it out. I mean, getting started early is always best, but sometimes that's not the luxury that everybody has as far as timing is concerned. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll also be able to address those things as we do more of these.
Yeah. That's the hope. That's the plan. All right. So let me see. I know some questions are already starting to come in here. Let's see. My third retake. All right. So that to me, and Petros, I will pretend to be an MCAT expert sometimes on the show, but you are the MCAT expert. When I see third retake, I go, uh-oh, what did we do wrong? Or that's a more negative term. What could we have done better the first few times? I do not feel ready, but I want to apply this cycle. And that sentence there tells me everything I need to know, that we have a student that is super stressed and pressured and is making decisions, in my opinion, incorrectly, making decisions based on timelines versus readiness.
Yeah. I will always take the stand that you should only take this exam if you feel ready.
Yeah.
Right. And so I will agree 100% with what you just said in terms of as soon as I saw the words, I do not feel ready.
Yep.
Should I void or retake? In my mind, I'm like, well, if you don't feel ready and, you know, and that's, and you're testing on Saturday, today is Thursday.
Yeah.
In reality, you're not doing any studying tomorrow because you should take a day off.
Yeah.
Without, I mean, if you want to share scores, please feel free to share scores. Right. I mean, but
it's between,
I will
say
without
between
seeing,
them and me and you.
What is that?
It's just between the three of us.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but I would say you're probably in a better position to postpone to August 16th. But I will add that it's not just about postponing it. It's about having a solid plan between what are you going to do between now and August 16th to feel ready. And maybe what are the things that, you know, happened that are not allowing you to feel ready, especially with a third retake. You know, and if it's maybe not August 16th, maybe it makes more sense for, you know, I hate to say it, but either September or not applying this cycle, or right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, I think, is really what it comes down to. So
yeah, and that's where I think, right, the admissions side that I can bring, and you have some experience as well, is like, what's the rush in applying? Why do we need to apply right now? Yeah. And yeah, it's just there's so many nuances. I'll throw a link into the chat for everyone. We do offer MCAT tutoring if that's something potentially that anyone is interested in, or if you want to pick Petros's brain a little bit more and decide potentially if you need some tutoring. There is a link there to a consultation call to have a quick little 15-minute call with Petros to see what potentially those next steps might be. And again, whether or not our team can potentially help you with that too. Love it. All right. So Petros, answering the question, the test is Saturday. It's Thursday. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the AAMC is pretty sticklers with cancellations and rescheduling and all that stuff. So we're within a window where I don't even know if it can be canceled. It can't be rescheduled.
No, it would just be a no-show.
You either don't show up or you show up and void it. What should the student do you think?
I mean,
it's not like they need the experience of what the
that's the thing is that I mean, if like one part of my brain goes to, well, you can go and take the exam and void it, you'll never know your score, but you get the practice of taking the exam, but it still shows up as a void. Yep. But if it's your third
schools
time,
don't see that, right? Schools don't see the void.
But also if it's your third time, do you need to spend another 8 hours, right? Correct. Taking the exam, like go do, quite frankly, spend 8 hours studying, or I spend 4 hours studying and 4 hours doing something fun on Saturday. And I think you'll probably be in a better place in terms of just kind of resetting almost. Might be the let us know, or again, schedule time as mentioned, to kind of figure out what you've been doing, why we got to this place. There's no blame, right? Like, it happens. Maybe just sometimes I've had this conversation more times than I can remember. Sometimes we just need more runway, and that's okay. So it's just a matter of, and I have seen through my years, students who think, okay, just hypothetical, I'm gonna test in April, and then they're not ready to test in April, and then they say, okay, I'm gonna postpone, but I'm gonna reschedule for middle of May. Well, that's not enough time, right? And then you just constantly have these very short Okazaki fragment-esque kind of pieces, right, of prep time, and it's not actually connected and linear. So I'm trying to get nerdy.
I don't know who this Okazaki guy is, but I don't like him.
It's a DNA reference, right?
Oh, it's a DNA. Okay, all right, there you go. Was there a stop code on in there? I don't know. That's RNA.
Different.
different. I don't know these things. Yeah, whatever. All right. Sweet. I like the background. I just threw that together real quick. Shmuti. I'll be completing my prereqs December 2025. I plan to stop working and study fully January to April and take the MCAT in April and apply in May. Is this a realistic goal? By the way, I'll be a first-time applicant. It scares me a little bit. There's nothing scary about being a first-time applicant. Come to our pre-med office hours on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern to check that out. Realistic timeline, right? January to April. That's 4 months of studying, taking the MCAT sometime in April. So 3+ months of studying full-time.
I think full-time is great. That's realistic in terms of the amount of time. I will add that, you mentioned that you're finishing your prerequisites in December, but there are some prerequisites that you've already finished. So there would be nothing wrong. And actually, I would encourage you to spend some time now reviewing some of those prereqs that were a long time ago, so that when you get to January and you're going in earnest with the MCAT prep, you've maximized your time. You're not spending time kind of going backwards to the chem, the intro chem class that you took maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. So that's always an opportunity. If you can kind of get ahead, then, take it from there. But I think it's realistic. I don't necessarily think you would have to go like 40 hours per week MCAT prep between January and April. Like, there are other things that you can be doing, and quite frankly should be doing, to get a little bit of balance in your life just in general. But at the same time, you don't want to be juggling way too much at the same time. So
and that's where, again, the advising side comes into play. Is it always scares me when students take this MCAT hibernation and only go and do MCAT stuff, because let's say she tests, or they test the end of April, and now they're like, okay, now I'm ready to work on my application. Like, you're going to be super stressed working on letters of recommendations, personal statements, activity descriptions, other impactful experiences, starting to think about pre-writing secondaries. So my recommendation is always use application prep as a break from MCAT prep, and allow your brain some rest and do some different tasks there.
I agree.
Sweet. We have someone who doesn't think very much of medicine. Should I show that? Should I not? Yeah. Hey, everyone has their own thoughts on medical school. So, Tyler, more pointed question. I feel like I do a good job memorizing the chemistry, physics equations, but get completely frazzled and lost in my brain when I'm presented with an actual question. I love it. Should we jump in? I don't know if the practice question we have is a potential launching off point for that, or
let me address it in general first, because I think this is actually this actually might be kind of a good example of the example. So Tyler, thank you for typing that in, because that, I think, summarizes a lot of times one of the frustrations and kind of the hurdles with the MCAT. So we did not plan this, right? So this is, but like, very, very well put question. Memorizing a chemistry or a physics equation is a necessity for doing well on the MCAT. However, it is not complete, right? Like, that's the issue. You can know that PV equals nRT all day long. You can know that whatever is whatever.
That's the minimum.
Right? Great. Good for you. High five. Congratulations. MCAT's never going to reward you for that stuff.
Yeah.
They're only going to reward you for being able to apply the material. And, so when you say, but I get completely frazzled and lost my brain when I'm presented with an actual question, you're not alone. But the reason why that's happening is because there's a necessity for learning how to apply the material, quite frankly, putting your detective hat on a little bit. And I'll show you what I mean by this in a second. And really being able to solve the problem, right? Answer the task at hand. And this is not your fault. It's quite frankly the way that we are taught in school, right? I mean, the majority of chemistry, physics classes, there are problem sets, right? You got to do a bunch of problems, and you submit your problem sets in whatever cadence, and then there's a midterm or there's a final, and and you cram for that midterm, that final, and you memorize your formulas, and you go through and you're like, okay, I need to use this, I need to use this. But the MCAT then says, okay, all of that's great. We have that information about you from your grades. Now we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to say, here's something you've never seen before. Using the knowledge that you have, decipher it, right? Solve something, or prove to us that you know what the formula is for something by being able to solve this question, right? There's no question on the MCAT that says, give me the formula for Gibbs free energy. Yep. That's not how it's worded ever. But there are plenty of questions on the MCAT that require you to use the formula for Gibbs free energy. So on that note, the question about, right, about Gibbs free
drum
energy.
roll, please.
You like that segue, right? So it's that's what it is. So let me make sure that this is working. So I'm gonna do that, and let's see if I can do. You see the slideshow and not the slides on the left, because I now can't see y'all.
No.
You still see the slides on the left?
No, it just goes blank. It's like
it goes blank. Okay, well then we're gonna do it this way. Is what we're gonna do.
Click through it that way.
Yeah, we're gonna click through it this way. We'll scroll it this way is what we'll do.
Yeah.
So here's what I mean by this. So as far as what's actually being assessed on the MCAT is it's kind of this equation. So there's the prior knowledge that you have. So Tyler, in your example, that's the chemistry formulas. That's the physics formulas, right? That's understanding the stuff that you've learned in school. The test then gives you new information. And that new information can either come in the passages, or it can come in the question itself. And that's part of the puzzle. It's very similar to what a physician is doing on a daily basis, right? There's got your knowledge as far as school and practice and residency, et cetera, et cetera. Then the patient comes to you with the new information, right? This is the injury that I have, or these are the symptoms that I've been having. This is where the pain is, et cetera, et cetera. And they're putting those two pieces of information together and reasoning out a diagnosis. You're doing the same thing. You've got your prior knowledge. You've got the information from the passage. You're reasoning out a diagnosis. The diagnosis happens to be the answer choice, right? So you're saying, okay, this is kind of where this leads us to. So here's a very kind of classic MCAT type question. This is a standalone question. So this is not from a passage. This is just on its own. You've got a chemist. They're investigating an aqueous reaction. They don't even tell us what the chemicals are in the aqueous reaction. That's how unimportant the actual reaction is. And they might throw you and try to, put the actual reaction in there. And you're like, oh, I need to know about, carbonyls, or I need to know about this. But the reality is it's A to B and B is going back to A. So as soon as you see those double-headed arrows, you should already know something. And that's telling you equilibrium, right? Like this is kind of the process that's going on in your head. They say, which has a standard enthalpy change. Delta H is 80 kilojoules per mole. Standard entropy change, 200 joules per mole per Kelvin. And then they actually ask you the question. So the first part of the question is not even a question. It's just information that they're giving you. So that goes back to that formula I just showed you, that's the new information, right? They've given you this information as far as what the delta H is, what the delta S is for this reaction. Then they actually ask you the question, under which of the following temperatures will the reaction proceed spontaneously under standard state conditions? We say, okay, great, spontaneous. So the first thing that you have to kind of analyze here is really what is it that's important, and what is it new that they've given to you, and what is it that they're actually asking you. So they've given you delta H, they've given you a value for delta S, they're telling you that they want it to be spontaneous, and they're asking you which of the 4 answer choice temperatures is this going to all be true. So effectively, you have delta H, you have delta S, you don't have the T value, but you also know the environment that you want it to be in, which is spontaneous. You actually have 4 pieces of information, one of which you need to plug in, right? You need to go and find that number. The trick, and this is kind of maybe jumping ahead a little bit here, but the twist in the story that they do something very, very sneaky in that they give you the value 80 and they give you the value 200, but one is in kilojoules and one is in joules. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to, in fact, convert either the joules into kilojoules or the joules or the kilojoules into joules. So we'll do it the easy way, right? We'll do it the easy way and we'll go from kilojoules to joules, because then we have 80,000 and 200 versus 80 and 0.2. Nobody wants to deal with a decimal if they don't have to deal with a decimal, right, Ryan? So, right? I mean,
Sure.
I'm not lying when I say that. I try to avoid decimals as much as I can.
Yeah.
So we've got 80,000.
I try to teach that quick head math to my kids too. I'm like, I just try to get everything to a 10. That's all I try to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it, right? Like, let's make life is the MCAT is difficult enough. Life is difficult enough. Why deal with the decimals if we don't have to deal with the decimals?
Yep.
So we've got 80,000 and we've got 200. Now we're in the same units, so it's a level playing field. Now we can actually go and solve this problem. Okay, but there really are 2 paths you can go down with a problem like this. There's the long calculation path where you recall the delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. And you can go and plug in these answer choices and find the one that gives you the right conditions. Or there's the more strategic critical thinking approach, which is what I'm going to show you, right? This is the way that you really should be thinking about questions like this. But the reason why this is also important is that as you're doing, and this kind of advice at large for everyone, as you're doing practice problems, it's not just about doing the practice problem. It's about also learning something from it, because you'll never see this question again on the MCAT, but you'll see one very similar to it. So if you can kind of tackle those 2 things at the same time, you're going to be in a much better position in the long run, right? It's not just, okay, let me get this question right. Let me actually understand. Let me learn something that I can pass on to other people.
I want, if there are opportunities, Petros, to kind of quiz the audience.
The quizzing is about to come.
Yeah.
The quizzing is about to come.
All right.
So, yeah. Hang tight.
Can't wait.
Right? Exactly. So, all right. So here's how to think about this. I've set up a Cartesian coordinate plane, right? X-axis, Y-axis. Very simple. We've seen this 1,000 times before. And on the left, we've got delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. But what we also know is we know the delta G, when you're at equilibrium, is equal to 0. When we are greater than 0, it's non-spontaneous as far as the reaction goes. If delta G is less than 0, we are in a spontaneous condition. Right? These are facts that I would hope we just recall.
Okay, so you said that, right? We know. So that is something the students should know.
That is something the students should know.
Okay.
That is something the students should know. This is there's no bonus points for this yet.
I forgot it.
You forgot it. No, that's fine. Yeah, well, now you know, right? Now you know. But here's where this now comes into play. So if you're looking at this Cartesian coordinate plane, what this is actually telling us is it's telling us that, right, we've got 4 different possible outcomes depending on the sign of delta H and delta S, right? So we've got these 4 different regions. So here's my question. First question. This is softball. So this is the easy one. Of these three conditions, where do we want to end up in order to get this problem correct? This is the softball question. So there's harder ones to come. That's what it is.
So say that question again?
The question is, of these three delta G values,
yeah,
either equal to 0, greater than 0, less than 0.
Yeah.
In order to meet the conditions of the question,
Yep.
Where do we need to land? Which of the three?
And go back to the question.
I can't go back to the question.
Spontaneously.
That's the key word.
Okay. So Jennifer says negative.
Negative. And
negative ghostwriter.
Negative ghostwriter is correct, right? So that is where we want to end up. We want to end up in a world where we have a negative delta G value. Plain and simple. Okay. So take it one step further. I've put little signs here as far as the delta H's and the delta S's, right? So we're aware of which region it is that we are ultimately going to be in. And we're going to go through the four regions. Okay, we're going to go through the four regions. So if delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S, that's telling us that delta G is going to be equal to a positive value, because we are in the positive region of delta H, minus temperature. Now, the temperature is given in what units? What units is temperature always given to us, or should always be looked at when we're looking at chem stuff? What's the units for temperature?
Celsius? Kelvin?
Well, you want to go for Fahrenheit too and just
Fahrenheit? I got a 33% chance, unless there's some that I don't know.
There's some new one, right? That was created.
Is it Kelvin or Calvin?
It's Kelvin. It's Kelvin. Yeah. So here's my question to you: is Kelvin ever negative? Is there such a thing as negative Kelvin?
That'd be really cold.
It would be, yeah. It would not exist, right? It's so cold. Yeah. So there's no such thing as a negative Kelvin, right? So the lowest temperature in Kelvin is 0. Right, 0 Kelvin is as cold as we can ever get.
It's as cold as ice.
It's cold as ice, cold as Kelvin is Kelvin ice. So where I'm going with this is the sign value of T doesn't actually matter because it's always positive, right? I mean, it matters because it's positive. What's really going to dictate this T delta S is going to be the value of the delta S. So work with me here. If I've got a positive value for delta H and I'm subtracting from it a positive value because it's a positive delta S times the positive Kelvin value, what condition would I need to be in to get this delta G to be negative? Don't look at the numbers from the question. The numbers don't matter. What do I need to do over here in order to get an output that the delta G ends up being a negative number so that it is less than 0, so that it is spontaneous?
Yeah. Audience, what do you think? Answer that question. I like this thinking because we don't really care about the question.
We don't care about the question.
We care about understanding the math behind it.
Yep.
So
well, you can't have a negative delta H.
Because negative delta H doesn't make sense here.
Yeah, because it's not because you can't manipulate the H value or the S value.
Yep.
Because I'm in this quadrant, right? I've told you, like the quadrant has told us that the delta H value is positive and the delta S value is positive. So in order to be able to get an overall delta G that is negative, what must be true?
Here's a little more.
Here's it goes. So the T and the delta S need to be greater than the delta T. Perfect. How do I get that? How do I get to a delta T times delta S that is greater than whatever the delta H value is? What can I move? There's two options. but there's really only one. I can't move the delta S value because that's always going to be positive, right?
In this quadrant.
In this quadrant.
Yep.
I can move the T value, right? I can make it higher and higher and higher. And at some point, I'll overcome it. Using the numbers from our question, if the delta H was 80,000, the delta S was 200, right? I'd have to go to a number higher up, right? Because it'd have to be 200 times something more than 400 in order to overcome, right? To subtract more from the 80,000 in order to get to my negative number. So really what's happened here, quite frankly, is we've identified this first quadrant, which is that you're going to be negative, right? You're going to be less than 0. You're going to be spontaneous at high temperatures. So this region here is a temperature-dependent region, meaning you need to know what the temperature is in order to figure out whether you have spontaneity or you don't have spontaneity. Okay?
Got it.
Let's go to this region, right? Same rules. We've got delta G equals delta H minus T delta S. But the thing that's changed is that you've got a positive delta H still, but you've got a negative delta S. If I multiply a negative delta S by this negative sign that's here, what do I end up with? Negative times a negative is equal to what value?
There's always the stream delay, like by 10 seconds. You're like, oh, I want to answer. What is that negative by negative?
Negative
Obviously,
times
pretty
negative.
straightforward. You're going to get that positive.
You think positive, Ryan?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right? You're going to get positive. So here's my question. If you've got a positive delta H plus a positive, what value are you going to always get for delta G?
Always going to be positive.
It's always going to be positive. And if it's always positive, it's always greater than 0, then you're going to always be non-spontaneous.
Yep.
So in quadrant 2, the condition is that regardless of temperature, this is a temperature independent quadrant.
Yep.
Right? It's always going to be non-spontaneous. Now you can probably start to guess what's going to happen over here in quadrant number 3. If I have a negative delta H and I've got a negative delta S, in order to, again, because it's a negative plus some value, because it's going to be negative, this negative sign here and the negative sign over here for the delta S, what's going to have to happen is it's going to have to be really, really small, right? You don't want to overcome the negative delta S's value to get to the negative delta G.
Yep.
So over here, we are spontaneous, but at low temperatures. So literally the opposite, right? If you go diagonal, it's opposite.
Yep.
So then now this all starts to fill in. You can probably already predict what's going to be over here.
Where are we going, people?
Where are we going with this, right? There's a method to the madness. If I've got a negative delta H and I'm subtracting a T value, which is positive, times a positive delta S, I'm taking a negative and I'm subtracting more from it. So if I didn't have $80,000, I'm going to subtract more than, I'm going to take more money away. Now I don't have or I don't have $100,000 or whatever, whatever unit you want to be using. So now I'm going to always be spontaneous. So again, completely opposite crisscross to this card to quadrant number 2. So these are the 4 regions is what it comes down to. So here's the deal. For this question, they told us that your delta H was positive. They told us it was 80,000. They told us that your delta S was 200. So I'm going to be operating in this region over here. I basically, and you basically, need to find an answer choice that tells you that you're going to be able to take away more than 80,000. So this is why the math then becomes relatively simple. They don't give you a calculator on the MCAT for a reason, because you don't need one. What times 200 would get me 80,000? what times 200 would always get me 80,000?
There's that question. Should be pretty simple.
I can ask it as, what times 200 would get me 8,000? And then add a zero, and add a zero, and add a zero, right?
That's
So
some zeros. That's some
yeah,
zeros.
two zeros.
Multiply.
So 400, right? So it's going to be 400. So it's 400 at 400.
So here's a clarification question.
I will get to that, Hazel. I will get to it.
Hazel.
I was waiting for it. Right? I was waiting for
Good job, Hazel.
I was waiting for it. So at 400 Kelvin, right? At 400 Kelvin, they would be in equilibrium. You need to be greater than 400 Kelvin. How many answer choices is greater than 400 Kelvin?
Solamente uno.
Right? Just one.
Just one.
That is by design, right?
Yeah.
That is not coincidental. It's not, right? They're not asking you to get to the, I mean, they're just like, which of these four?
Which one is the most spontaneous?
Is the most spontaneous,
Yeah.
right?
That's not MCAT style.
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to. The 298 number, that is what we refer to as being the standard conditions, right?
Is that a red herring?
That's room temperature is all it is, right? 273 Kelvin is 0 degrees Celsius, right? 25 degrees Celsius is standard conditions. We're not looking at that in this example, right? That's not what they're actually asking us for in this case. They're saying standard state conditions, meaning everything else is kind of normal operating, but they are literally saying, what's the temp? I mean, that's the question they're asking us, is they're saying that what's, where is the temperature going to have to be in order for this to be in a spontaneous condition? If they'd asked us which temperature is this going to have to be at in order for this to be at equilibrium, that answer would be 400, right? Because at 400, you were going to end up with a delta G value of equaling 0. 350, you're going to be non-spontaneous. 298, you're going to be non-spontaneous, right? They're glad. I'm glad you see it, right? They love mixing up. I mean, this is just kind of, it's not related to this question, it's related to all of chemistry. There's standard state, there's standard conditions, there's like all these standards that there's standard temperature and pressure, right, that you'll see. Those are just to kind of give a baseline. I always describe it as, chemists, physicists, they need to be able to communicate with each other. So they say, okay, we've just decided that this is what standard we're going to be using, for this go round, if you will. Yeah. And then they take it from there. So anyway, so all that being said, right, the answer is 500, right? Yeah. But really the more important thing is learning something like this, right? So now you've practiced a problem, you got it right, but now you can go answer any question related to this.
And relatively quickly, because you understand it and you don't have to rebuild this every time.
Exactly, right? For instance, if I said to you, okay, delta H is negative 500 and delta S is positive 2000, you wouldn't have to do any math. You just go, it's always spontaneous.
Yep. I want to go back to the standard state question, because I like Hazel, I'm like, wait a minute. When in the question where it says standard state conditions, right? When I think of standard state, I think temperature, atmosphere, all of that stuff. But when the question is specifically asking what is the temperature, it's obviously telling us that temperature isn't going to be standard state, right, but the atmosphere in this question is, right? We're not in a vacuum or anything else.
Yeah. So standard state essentially is saying that we're going to define some specific conditions. In this example, or in the example of chemistry, it's 1 atm of pressure and 298. That's your standard state. And you use that to figure out equilibrium constants. You use that to figure out all the different calculations and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Standard conditions is actually different, right? Standard conditions is, what we call STP. That's 0 degrees Celsius and 1 atm of pressure. So that one gets it a little bit more confusing.
Okay.
But the key is exactly what you said, Ryan, right? Like, it's not easy enough to just, it'd be too easy for them to just say, which of these, and you say, oh, it's 298. That's actually one of the traps they want you to fall for, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like, if that was true, just let's do a reality check here for a second. If that was true, that would mean that all reactions are are in equilibrium at 298 degrees Kelvin. We know
Yep.
that, right? We know that's not true. So, or I shouldn't even say degrees Kelvin because it's just 298 Kelvin.
Yeah.
Right. So,
okay.
So just something to consider.
So here's the question, right? Jennifer and Shmuti are both, and I'm sorry, give me a phonetic pronunciation of your name there. Are both like, how do you do that fast? And again, what?
Sorry, for some reason my computer connected to my AirPods, which were in my pocket.
Oh, that's
closed.
right.
So I didn't hear what you said.
Both Jennifer, a couple questions asking how you're supposed to do that in the time crunch that the MCAT gives you. And I think the answer comes down to, as you said, right? It's you have to understand and not just know the equation and then apply the equation every single time.
That's exactly it. I mean, did you see me actually do a calculation on the screen? No. Right? Like that's the thing, is that now the reason why that question took us, 10 minutes or whatever it was, because I was walking you through every single step, right?
Yep.
Like that's not happening in your head. You're not explaining it to a group of people, right, for the first time, maybe, right? And on the MCAT, you're just going to look at it and be like, okay, and this is where part of your training comes into play, right? It's reactionary. You see delta H, you see delta S, you're like, I'm already thinking delta G, and your mind already knows that delta S or delta G is less than 0, is spontaneous. So you're not doing any of that thinking, really. That's the reaction. And that's part of the training, is that you then go and say, okay, in order to meet these conditions, I need to be spontaneous. And you know that spontaneity will come when delta H is negative and delta, right, and delta S is positive. Yeah. Right. So you're thinking through those things, but they've told me that both of them are positive. And I know that that's temperature dependent. I know that it has to be high temperature, right? So like that all happens in a relatively quick amount of time. I don't want to sugarcoat it though. There are plenty of questions that will require more time, but there are plenty of questions that require far less time. So for the ones that require more time, you're going to have to spend more time doing them. Some questions, not to get too off topic, but some questions, the only way you can answer them is with a really, really long set of calculations. Sometimes those questions aren't necessarily worth doing right away. Go get the point somewhere else. I mean, at the end of the day on the MCAT, I get this question all the time. How do I score higher on the MCAT? Tell you my answer. Get more questions right. Yeah. Right. That's all. I mean, that's very superficial, but it's very true.
But the missing part of that, which you said at the beginning of it, is, and sometimes to get more questions right, you just skip questions altogether.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So
if
you have time for it, you go back to it.
Great. Come back to it. I love that. And so we're kind of coming to the close here of, again, kind of first episode MCAT Office Hours here. The goal here is live Thursdays every week at 2 p.m. Eastern. So as you're watching this, let us know, like, what else do you want to see, right? Did you like working through that equation? Is that a little bit too hard to do on the live stream? Was that useful? Do you want to see us do that every week? Should we rotate kind of different sections every single week and do a cars one week, biochem, psych soc, etc.? So let us know what you think would make this the most valuable for you. And then, hopefully we'll always have time to answer some standard questions too for the MCAT advising part of it. Do you take the MCAT junior or senior year of undergrad? John, that really depends on when you're applying to medical school, which then depends on when you want to start medical school. And so we almost always work backward from when you are planning on starting medical school. The application for that is going to be a year before. And then ideally, you have your MCAT done before you apply, right? That's the ideal standard state conditions.
Let's not confuse standard state anymore than it's already.
So hang out and think about kind of when you're planning on starting medical school. If you're taking a gap year, then you're probably taking the MCAT later. If you're not taking a gap year, taking it earlier. So kind of a roundabout answer there. Hazel, I enjoyed the schedule of starting with random personal questions and diving into questions. Where'd the phonetic spelling go? Shamate. This was great. Thank you. Knowing more tricks like this is super helpful. Nicholas, been great. Definitely learned something. Nicholas answering on LinkedIn. Hello, Nicholas. I think that was the first LinkedIn comment we've gotten. Jennifer, rotating subjects would be helpful, especially science passages. Thank you. Yeah, so we'll be working on those as well. Sweet. What other questions do you all have before we sign off here? Mybe had a question here. Do you think UWorld is mandatory for a high score? Can you get a high score only using the AAMC material? I'm excited to be working kind of behind the scenes and hopefully have some stuff to share in the future related to this question. But Petros, what do you think?
I was going to comment that the key is to get lots of practice questions in and repetitions in.
And where those questions come from
are
mostly irrelevant. Sweet. All right. Let's see if there are any questions before we jumped into that. Here we go. Brian. I'm an immigrant, took the MCAT 2 times. First time I got a 501, 120 cars. Second time I got a 510, crushed it, but still 121 in cars. The time between the 2 tests is 2 months. Holy moly, that's a huge improvement in only 2 months. Should I still apply the cycle or retake the MCAT? I'll tackle this one. It's more of an admissions question. Can you be competitive with a 121 cars? Do the admissions committees care? They can. I know Emory is very public, which I love about their kind of standards. They say anything less than. Oh wait, before I answer the question, Petros, I have a very technical, very important question for you. I historically call biochem, chem phys, cars, etc. subsections. But then I was saying it the other day going, no, those are just sections. Why am I calling them subsections?
I think actually one of our chats when I a month or so ago, you were saying subsections and I was like, wait a minute. So it's sections.
Yeah, there are sections.
There are 4 sections on the MCAT. Yeah. There are no subsections.
Right? I don't know where subsection came from.
But there's a mix of topics that is in each of those 4 sections.
Yeah.
And those topics are not exclusive to any one section.
Yeah.
Right? So like biochem is in both the biochem section and in the chem phys section.
I think I know where it came from, is calling it a sub score versus a section score, and then combining sub and section and getting all mixed up there.
It's it's just a section
score. Yeah.
Section score, overall score. Yeah. Anyway.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So back to you, Brian. Sounded like some Family Guy there. Hey, hello, Brian. The Emory, they are very public. Anything less than a 124 section score is considered non-competitive. That's their language of basically saying, hey, we have probably a cutoff at 124. We're not going to say it's a cutoff. We're just going to say it's non-competitive. Every school is going to be different. I do know of at least one person. It only takes one person that got in with a 121 cars. So there are schools out there that are okay with it and care more about the overall score. And they have their own data at their school based on prior students and what their scores were and how they're doing in classes and all that stuff. So, yeah. William, anyone know what GPA is used for HPSP? Yeah, I don't know. Go check that out. SREV, please comment on UWorld. We did. Is this reflective? Oh, so I'm assuming they're asking UWorld. You can kind of create full length exams now. My guess is those aren't reflective of real MCAT scores because they're not like hand-picked questions, psychometric, all that nerdy stuff. Balanced real tests.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
AAMC exams. Those are what you want to go off of.
Yep.
I plan to potentially take the MCAT without completing physics. I intend to self-teach. What are your thoughts? The alternative would be to take physics the same time I am prepping and take the MCAT something. Physics 2, I've always been told or no, is like it's not a big thing on the MCAT. Don't worry about it. But physics 1 more so. What are your thoughts there?
Physics 1, for sure, you need to know that material. Physics 2, there is a good amount of material that you need to know from it, but it is much more slim pickings, so you can probably self-teach it. Hazel, in your situation or anyone's situation who falls, or anyone who falls into this situation, I would say yes, it's doable. It is more easily doable if you've been exposed to formal physics before, meaning you took it in high school or you maybe took it as a AP class, whatever it might be, just because of all the terminology and everything that's involved in learning something like that for the first time. There are plenty of resources out there. That is something that we actually also do as part of our tutoring services, is we do provide academic tutoring for folks who are in this situation or just need some supplement, right? You're learning it on your own, but you want to have somebody that you can ask questions to. That is something that we do also provide. But it's doable. It's definitely doable. I worry about taking the physics and studying for the MCAT at the same time, because that's just a lot of studying, right? So there's a lot that has to happen in that time frame.
Okay. Awesome. All right. I'll answer this one, even though it's not an MCAT specific question. I'll answer this. Last 2 years, I got a 3.96 cumulative. It's 3.4. Should I still apply? Yes. Yep, go for it. If you want to go to that school, even if they have an average, an NYU of 3.9, NYU is almost the only school that has an average that high. Yeah, it's an average, or it's really a median. That's where that data is. But your trend is fantastic, and apply broadly. Go for it. Petros, any last minute comments? How'd you think this first session went?
I had fun. I had a good time. So
yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully everybody else did. If let us know what else you'd like to see. But I will say that don't hesitate in starting to start studying for this exam, because as you saw, even from that one question that we did, there's a lot to unpack. And that was not a difficult, that was a moderate level question. Like, that wasn't, they're far more complex questions that just would take us maybe the whole hour of office hours. So get started soon, get started strong. And quite frankly, make sure that you have a plan that's going to work for you, and not just something you read online, right? Like, not just some. I spoke to a student a couple weeks ago who said, I got this advice from someone, blah 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 blah, and I kind of chuckled because it was horrible advice. And I said, well, where was it? She's like, oh, it's somebody on Instagram who just took the MCAT for the first time. I was like, okay, like let's look at our sources. So. I'm going to answer William's question just to end things, maybe a prequel for next week.
Yeah.
How do you actually memorize all these formulas for the MCAT? The way you actually memorize the formulas is by doing practice problems, because you don't want to necessarily just sit and memorize the formulas. You want to memorize when to be using the formulas. So practice problems actually get you to a point that the formulas become second nature. You're not even thinking about it. You're like, oh, yeah, PV equals NRT, and here's what I'm going to put it. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, friends. MCAT Office Hours, episode 1 is in the books. Thank you all for joining. Tell your friends, share it with your pre-med clubs. This is free MCAT prep. Why wouldn't you want free MCAT prep? If you are looking at potentially using a tutor to get a little bit more nitty gritty with your prep, medicalschoolhq.net has a link to talk to Petros about how our amazing team of tutors can help you. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Petros, thank you so much.
Thank you.